My mom made me sleep in the garage on Christmas Eve because I forgot to get her boyfriend a gift. Santa skips the ungrateful, she smirked. Later, I heard her telling him I was the embarrassment she never asked for. I am 27 male now, 17 male at the time, was living with my mom, Carla, and her boyfriend Donnie. We were barely getting by financially, but I'd been working part-time at a local grocery store and saving up what I could. That Christmas, I got my mom a small gift and couldn't afford to get her boyfriend anything. That decision, apparently, was enough for her to make me sleep in the garage on Christmas Eve. Later that night, I overheard a conversation between them that changed the way I saw her forever. She called me the embarrassment she never asked for. That was the moment I decided I was done. We were sitting at the dinner table, Donnie chewing with his mouth open like always, my mom refilling her wine glass too often, and me pushing my mashed potatoes around with a fork I found had a spot of dried egg on it from breakfast. I'd just handed her a small velvet bag with a silver necklace I spent 2 months saving up for. She barely looked at it. "Is that all?" she asked. I blinked. "I mean, yeah. I thought you'd like it." "And Donnie," she said without even making eye contact. I froze. I didn't get anything for Donnie. "I didn't think unbelievable," she muttered. Donnie smirked, leaning back in his chair. "It's cool. I'm just the guy who feeds him." What happened next doesn't seem real when I replay it in my mind. But it happened. She stood up, grabbed my plate, dumped it in the sink, and told me if I couldn't show basic respect in her home, I could sleep elsewhere tonight. The garage should be just fine. The garage was everything you'd expect a man like Donnie to be proud of, cluttered with tools he rarely used, empty beer cans stacked like trophies, and an old fold-out camping chair that smelled like oil and wet socks. There was a space heater humming quietly in the corner, probably the only gesture that kept things from becoming a child welfare report. I sat on the cement floor, wrapping myself in a thin sleeping bag, wondering what I had done that was so terrible. I had tried. I had worked, scrimped, even skipped lunch on school days to afford that necklace. And it wasn't like Donnie ever liked me. Why would I be expected to buy him something? The cold was seeping in through the floor when I heard them. The garage door to the kitchen wasn't completely shut. Their voices filtered through like ghosts. "He doesn't even try," Donnie grumbled. My mother's response chilled me more than the December air. "I know. He's just a mistake I never should have made. An embarrassment I never asked for." There was a pause. I pictured them pouring another glass of wine, lighting another cigarette. "If I could go back," she continued, "I would have taken care of it before it ever became a problem." Donnie let out a low whistle. "You mean?" "Yeah. I mean exactly that." I didn't cry. I didn't move. I just stared at the wall until the heater cut off and the silence swallowed me whole. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen to grab a granola bar before heading to my shift. Neither of them looked up from the TV. My mom was curled up on the couch like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just exiled her only son to a damp garage for forgetting to buy her boyfriend a gift. No apology. No explanation. No acknowledgement. I went to work. Stocked shelves. Bagged groceries. Told a little kid where the candy aisle was. And by the time my shift ended, I had made a choice. Over the next few months, I did what I had to do. I put in more hours. Saved money. Filled out college applications at the library because I knew asking to use the home computer would just be another excuse for them to insult me. I applied to colleges I knew I could afford with scholarships and financial aid. I didn't tell anyone. I lived my life quietly, like a guest overstaying my welcome. I did the dishes without being asked, stayed out of the way, got straight A's. But none of that mattered. To them, I was still that burden that forgot a gift. Sometimes I'd come home and hear Donnie telling her to cut the cord already, and her responding with, "He's almost out the door." They had no idea I'd already bought my ticket. I didn't celebrate my 18th birthday. Not in the way most people do, at least. There wasn't a cake. No card. No happy birthday. I didn't expect much, but I guess part of me still hoped for a little acknowledgement, something, anything. Instead, Carla and Donnie spent the evening watching a rerun of some car auction show on cable, eating leftover chili from 2 nights before. When I walked into the kitchen that morning, Carla was putting on mascara at the table, her makeup mirror plugged into the same outlet as the coffee maker. "Morning," I said. She didn't look up. "There's cereal." That was it. No recognition. Not even a glance. I poured myself a bowl of stale cornflakes and sat across from her, spoon clinking softly. I kept thinking, maybe she's pretending she forgot and has something planned for later. But no one came and went. Then 3 p.m. Then 6. Nothing. When Donnie got home from the shop, he asked if there were any beers left. Carla told him to check the garage fridge. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the cracked ceiling of my room. I wasn't sad. Not exactly. I felt hollow, like a balloon losing air slowly, silently. I knew I didn't belong there. I never had. And I think part of me always knew they'd never really see me as anything more than the leftover pieces of a broken plan. From that point on, everything I did was to get out. Every morning, I'd wake up before the sun and leave for school early. After classes, I'd go straight to work. My manager, Gina, this chain-smoking woman with the softest heart, had picked up on things without me having to explain much. She started giving me extra hours, sneaking free food into my bag at the end of the night. "You eat enough, kid?" she asked once, tossing me a half-wrapped sandwich. "Yeah," I lied, catching it mid-air. "Thanks." She gave me a long look. "You let me know if that changes." That job and the school library became my safe spaces. I buried myself in textbooks and college prep websites. I spent nights applying to every scholarship I could find, essay after essay about hardship and perseverance, about wanting to build a life from nothing. I never once wrote about Carla. By spring, I'd been accepted to Portland State University with a decent financial aid package. It wasn't a full ride, but with what I'd saved, plus work study, I could swing it. I kept it to myself. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't want to give them the satisfaction of dismissing it or using it as a reason to mock me. Around late April, I remember coming home from school to find Donnie tossing my old trophies and childhood books into a black trash bag. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked. "Cleaning. Your mom said we need more space." I looked down at the bag. A third-grade science fair ribbon stuck out from the top, the one I won for a solar system model I made from foam balls and fishing wire. "I didn't say you could throw that out." Donnie scoffed, not even looking at me. "You're almost outta here, anyway." "What's it matter?" I wanted to punch him. Just once. I pictured it, even, that smug expression crumpling under my fist. But instead, I picked up the bag and walked it out to the garage myself. Not because I agreed, but because I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing me care. That night, I pulled out the box where I'd hidden my college acceptance letter, reread it under the dim light of my desk lamp, and told myself, just a few more months. Graduation came and went like a whisper. Carla didn't attend the ceremony. She said she had a doctor's appointment. Donnie went fishing. I sat in the audience by myself, wearing my cap and gown over a dress shirt I'd bought from Goodwill. My name was called, and I walked the stage with no one to cheer for me. No camera flashes. No clapping from the bleachers. Just silence. When I got home that evening, Carla was on the couch with a bowl of popcorn, watching some crime documentary. "You graduate?" she asked without looking away from the screen. I just nodded and went to my room. I think that was the moment I realized how little I mattered in their world. In July, I booked a one-way bus ticket to Portland. I didn't tell Carla or Donnie. I just planned, packed, and waited. Every evening I folded and refolded my clothes, planning what I could take in one duffel. I kept my documents and acceptance letters sealed in a plastic folder tucked under my mattress. I had $1,113 to my name, most of it in cash, hidden in an envelope inside an old shoebox under the bed. I started sleeping lighter. Flinching at every knock, expecting confrontation, bracing for another cold shoulder or insult. But they didn't notice. Or maybe they just didn't care enough to ask. A week before I left, I overheard Carla talking to someone on the phone, probably her sister. She was in the kitchen, voice slightly hushed, but the walls in our house were thin. No, he doesn't help around here. He's barely here at all. Always off at work or school or something. I don't even know why he bothers. It's not like he's going to make anything of himself. She laughed. You know what I told Donnie? I told him, once he's out, we're finally gonna have our peace. That word stuck with me. Peace. Like I had been their storm. Like I'd caused the dysfunction, the bitterness, the years of resentment. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was past it. Numbness had replaced the ache, and I felt strangely detached from it all. Like I'd already moved on in my head, and my body was just finishing the paperwork. I kept my head down that final week like a soldier on the last stretch of a long deployment. I counted hours more than days. My bag was packed, shoes by the door, and every second I wasn't working, I was checking and rechecking my schedule. My bus would leave at 5:40 a.m. on a Monday morning. The station was a 20-minute walk from the house. I'd rehearsed the route in my head dozens of times. The night before, I barely slept. Not from fear, more like anticipation, the kind that keeps your body humming and your thoughts racing. Around midnight, I sat on the floor of my room, cross-legged, staring at everything I was leaving behind. A warped dresser. Faded curtains with little sunflower prints. A single photo of me and my dad, tucked in the corner of the mirror like a forgotten memory. I hadn't seen him since I was 6, but I remembered how he used to comb my hair before school and warm up my mittens in the microwave during winter. That photo, taken at Point Defiance Park, was the only thing I kept that reminded me there was once warmth in my life. I slid it carefully into my bag. At 4:30 a.m., I stood in the hallway of our house one last time. It was dark and still. The only sound was the ticking of the clock above the stove. I didn't leave a note. I knew if I did, Carla would twist it into something it wasn't. She'd call me dramatic. Or selfish. Or cold. But I wasn't any of those things. I was just done. I stepped outside quietly, pulling the door shut behind me. The air was crisp, the streets silent. I walked fast, not daring to look back. Portland wasn't paradise, but it felt like breath after drowning. The campus was a mix of old brick buildings and glassy modern ones, nestled in the heart of downtown. Buses rumbled past. Students milled around with coffee cups and backpacks. I moved into a shared dorm with 2 roommates, both a little younger, but friendly enough. My room was tiny, but it was mine. No cigarette smoke. No muffled insults through the walls. No walking on eggshells. For the first time in my life, I slept in peace. I picked up a work-study job at the library, where the hours were slow and quiet. I stocked books, cleaned tables, and helped the occasional student with the printer. I found comfort in the routine, in the silence between shelves, in the way people greeted each other with kindness or at least civility. By the second week, I was eating regular meals and sleeping through the night. My body didn't quite know what to do with itself. For so long, I had been in survival mode. Now I was just living. Carla didn't reach out. Not at first. I wasn't surprised. But in early October, my phone buzzed while I was in class. It was a message from an unknown number. Hope you are well. Let us know if you need anything. Mom, I stared at it for a long time, then locked my phone and slid it into my backpack. I didn't answer. It wasn't that I was angry, at least not entirely, but something about her suddenly using us made my stomach turn. Like Donnie had earned a place in that sentence. Like I was supposed to view them as a unit now. 2 days later, another message came. Donnie said we should send you a little money to help with books. Let me know. There it was again. Donnie said. As if he were the spokesperson now. As if he had a say in anything related to me. I didn't reply. Thanksgiving came and went. I stayed on campus. The dining hall offered a free meal for students who didn't go home. I sat at a long table with a girl from Nepal and a guy from upstate New York who hadn't spoken to his dad in 5 years. We shared cranberry sauce and stories that weren't light but weren't heavy either. Just real. That night, I called my dad. I'd found his number through a relative's Facebook page, someone I hadn't talked to since childhood but who still had the same last name. When he picked up, his voice cracked a little. Hi. It's me. Nolan, I said. Long pause. Nolan, he repeated. My God. How are you? We talked for almost 2 hours. He lives in Montana now. Worked maintenance at a ski lodge. Remarried. No other kids. He said he'd tried to reach out a few times when I was younger but Carla always made it hard. She didn't want me involved. Said you were better off without me. I didn't say much to that. I just listened. Before we hung up, he said, if you ever want to come visit, you've got a room here. Just say the word. And something inside me cracked open. Not in a painful way, more like a beam of sunlight through blinds you didn't realize were closed. By December, I was fully settled into my classes and routine. I worked mornings in the library, afternoons in a student cafe nearby. I wasn't making much, but it was enough. Rent, food, some second-hand clothes. Christmas was coming up again. I kept thinking about that night in the garage. How cold it was. The way my mom's voice had gone flat when she said I was an embarrassment. That night was still lodged in my bones like a splinter. But I also noticed something else. I didn't dread the holidays anymore. I didn't feel trapped or angry or desperate for affection. I felt free. Winter break came and the campus emptied out like a drained bottle. My roommates left to visit family, and the halls got quieter by the day. I stayed behind, not out of necessity anymore, but by choice. I could have called my dad in Montana and taken him up on his offer. But something in me wasn't ready. I wasn't avoiding it, just giving it space to breathe, to feel less like a decision and more like a step I'd choose when I was ready. December in Portland was wet and cold. The kind of cold that didn't bite but lingered, like a damp towel on your skin. I bundled up and walked the city streets a lot. Not for any reason other than to move, to think. I liked passing coffee shops with fogged-up windows, bookstores with hand-scrawled signs in the glass, families bundled together waiting for the MAX train. I wondered what they were going home to. Did they have moms who hugged them at the door? Dads who asked about finals? Or was everyone just playing their part for the holidays, pretending things were fine for one more year? I didn't decorate my dorm room. No tree. No string lights. Just a mug of instant cocoa and a worn hoodie that still smelled like the grocery store stockroom. On Christmas Eve, I stayed late at the cafe. The owner, Ruth, was a tough woman in her 60s who'd survived 2 bankruptcies, a divorce, and a heart attack. You could go home, kid, she said as she wiped down the counter. I am home, I replied, smiling softly. She looked at me for a second, then handed me a brown paper bag. Take this before I change my mind. Turkey sandwich, gingerbread cookie, and that peppermint hot chocolate you pretend you don't like. I laughed, a real laugh, and tucked the bag under my arm. Thanks, Ruth. She gave a small nod. No one should be hungry on Christmas Eve. Not even the quiet ones. Back in my room, I sat cross-legged on the floor, unwrapped the cookie, and opened my laptop. I had one email, from Carla. Subject: Merry Christmas, hope you're good. House is quiet without you. Donnie fixed the furnace. We're having ham. Let me know if you're doing okay. I stared at it for a long time. There was no apology. No mention of last year. Just that vague, impersonal tone she always used when she knew she should say something but didn't want to own any of it. I didn't reply. I left it unread, marked it as later, and closed the laptop. The rest of the night passed quietly. I read a little, listened to some lo-fi music, stared out the window at the rain streaking down the glass. Around midnight, I heard someone down the hall playing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" on a Bluetooth speaker. The song echoed through the walls, slow and distant. I smiled, but not because I felt festive. I smiled because I was alone, but not lonely. New Year's came and went with little fanfare. I was working the early morning cafe shift on New Year's Day, and Ruth came in with 2 cups of coffee and her usual raspy greeting. "Guess we made it, huh?" "Looks like it," I said, handing her a stale croissant she pretended to hate. Around the second week of January, my dad called again. "You know," he said, "there's a spare room up here. It's not much, got a weird draft near the window and a couple of squeaky floorboards, but it's yours if you ever want it." I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to go, but because I wasn't sure how to explain the pause in my heart. After years of being let down, it's hard to believe someone means what they say. "I'll think about it," I said. "No pressure," he replied. "Just keep the option open." I started writing again. Little things. Short essays, blog-style journal entries. I found myself chronicling my life more as an observer than a participant, a side effect, I think, of growing up where silence was safer than honesty. I wrote about the grocery store, about the girl who used to buy canned peaches every Friday like clockwork, about Carla's chipped nail polish and how it always smelled like fake cherries. I didn't write about Donnie. Not directly. But in every story, there was a shadow of him, of men who take up space without asking and demand thanks without giving anything of value. One night, I printed out one of the pieces and pinned it to the corkboard above my desk. It wasn't fancy or polished. Just a paragraph about the garage. The cold. The heater that barely worked. The way I used to stare at the ceiling and imagine a future that felt impossible. I didn't show anyone. I didn't have to. It was enough to see it written down, to give shape to the pain in a way that made it feel smaller. Like I could breathe again. Spring quarter rolled in with a rhythm I could finally keep pace with. I was getting A's, waking up without dread, even laughing more. Some days I almost forgot about the years that preceded this new life, almost. But healing has a funny way of revisiting you when you least expect it. And for me, it came one afternoon with a knock at the cafe's back door. I wasn't expecting anyone. It was a quiet Tuesday, the lunch rush had passed, and I was mopping near the sink. Ruth had stepped out to meet a supplier. The knock was light but persistent. I opened it without thinking, and there she was. Carla. Wearing sunglasses even though it was cloudy, holding a giant tote bag and a nervous smile that looked as uncomfortable as it felt. "Nolan," she said, surprised I answered. I stood still. For a moment I thought I was dreaming, some weird, twisted dream where the ghost of my childhood just showed up out of nowhere. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my tone even. "I was visiting a friend in Vancouver," she said. "Thought I'd stop by." She glanced around like she was expecting something more impressive, more dramatic than the back alley of a student cafe. "I didn't tell you where I worked." "I guessed," she said with a shrug, like it was a coincidence. She walked past me, into the kitchen area without being invited. I followed slowly, unwilling to give her any ground but needing to see what she wanted. The last time I saw her face, she was complaining about the price of laundry detergent while I stuffed my bag with socks and notebooks, preparing to disappear before sunrise. "I've been thinking about you," she said, resting her bag on a prep counter like she owned the place. "The house is quiet. Donnie's been different." I didn't respond. "I was thinking," she continued, "maybe you could come visit sometime. We've got that guest room now." I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel it, the weight of all those years where I felt like a guest in my own home. She cleared her throat. I mean, I know things got tense. But you're older now. We could maybe start fresh. There it was, her specialty. The revisionist version of the past. A tense misunderstanding instead of the full-blown neglect and rejection it really was. I don't think that's going to happen, I said. She blinked. You're really still holding on to all that? I'm not holding on, Carla. I'm done. Her jaw tensed at the name. Not Mom. Just Carla. I wanted her to feel the boundary. I built a life, I added. One without you. And it's better for it. She scoffed. Wow. You really think you're above us now? I smiled, not to provoke, but because I'd finally heard it out loud. The resentment. The insecurity. Not mine, but hers. You know, I said calmly, when I left, you didn't even notice. Not for weeks, right? She looked away. And now, here you are, pretending it was just a bad night. Like I imagined it. Like I imagined you saying I was the embarrassment you never asked for. Her head snapped back. She hadn't expected me to remember, or repeat it. You said that, I continued. On Christmas Eve. While I was in the garage you shoved me into. I was upset, she muttered. No, you were honest. That was probably the most honest thing you've ever said to me. We stood there for a long moment. She didn't cry. Carla wasn't the crying type. She folded her arms, like she always did when she felt cornered. Well, then I guess this was a waste of time. Guess so. She moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, she said over her shoulder, Donnie's gone. He left a few months ago. Took the truck and disappeared. Guess he wasn't much of a man after all. I gave a noncommittal nod. I didn't care. Not about him. Not about what she'd lost. But I did care about what she wanted, because I finally understood it. Carla hadn't come to make peace. She came because she thought I had something she needed. A connection. A future. Maybe even money. Or forgiveness. She came hoping the doormat she raised was still lying where she left it. But I wasn't there anymore. The real satisfying part came a few months later, not in something I did, but in what I didn't do. She emailed me. Asked if I'd help her co-sign on a small loan to fix some things around the house. She even offered to pay me back, with interest. I didn't reply. She followed up with a voicemail. It's just a signature. It would really help us out. I blocked the number. A few weeks after that, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it ring. Then another. Then another. Eventually, they stopped. It was then I realized I'd won. Not by yelling. Not by proving her wrong. But by choosing a life so far removed from hers that she couldn't touch it. She needed me now. And she would never have access to me again. Years passed. I graduated. Got a job at a nonprofit in Bend that focused on supporting kids who aged out of foster care. I got to help them find housing, jobs, stability, things I'd had to claw for. It felt like closing a circle. Eventually, I visited my dad in Montana. It wasn't dramatic. We sat on the porch, drank tea, and talked about nothing in particular. He showed me how to fix a leaky pipe. Told me about a time I fell asleep in his lap during a Mariners game when I was 4. We weren't rebuilding. We were just building, maybe for the first time. I never told him everything about Carla. He never asked. I think he knew the silence said enough. I look back now, not with anger, but with clarity. The revenge wasn't a moment or a line delivered at the perfect time. It was the quiet, simple life I built without her. A life where Christmas smells like real cookies, where birthdays are remembered, and where love isn't measured in gifts or guilt. That's how you win. Not by fighting the ghosts. But by living well enough that they can't follow you.